14 players missing, one fit striker, one fit left back, and even a defensive midfielder playing on the right wing. The injury crisis shows little sign of abating for the Canaries, but their championship form continues to be relentless. Welcome to this week's edition of the PinkUn.com Norwich City podcast. I'm your host, Connor Southwell, joined by Paddy, Davitt and Adam Harvey to reflect on another excellent afternoon on the road as Philippe Clement's men made it 9 wins from 11 games in all competitions with a 2-0 victory at Leicester City, moving 11 points clear of the championship relegation zone and leaving it hopefully in the rear-view mirror. Paddy, let's start with you because we were discussing off camera, and I'm sure we'll delve into all the various stats and statistics and numbers around Philippe Clement's transformation at Norwich City. This was another sign that they are heading in, a completely different direction to the one that their opponents on Saturday seemingly are heading in themselves.
It certainly was, and the comfort of the result and performance, beyond any stats and metrics you want to dig into, underline what is. You can pick any verbose word you want, but it's a transformation. It is nothing short of that from where they were to where they are now, and the fact that you go to Leicester in the bottom three, new manager in Gary Rowett. They've got 2 draws against Stoke and Borough away from home. This is his first game at home. You feel that's going to be a difficult assignment. Not a bit of it. I don't recall. Okay, maybe putting 5 past West Brom at the Hawthorns, but even that game, was in the balance until the goal rush in the second half. If we're honest, I don't recall an easier assignment away from home under Clement. The manner they were dismissive almost of what is, if you look at Leicester's squad, some very good players. I mean, you bring in Steffi Mavididi on in the second half. He has been a tormentor for Norwich in recent times in the Championship when the clubs have been in the Championship. Fatawa, who's clearly a very highly rated player, and I single those 2 out because Gary Rowett post-match talked about, and that might cut to the nub of why Norwich was so dominant, was because they look like a team with a structure where the players understand what they've been asked to do. The aggressiveness in terms of those 2 players you referenced, when they got the ball or Leicester tried to get to the ball to them, left backs, right backs, centre backs were out in their faces, very aggressive, stopping at source, preventing Leicester from getting any real momentum in terms of their attacking play. And then he contrasted that with, he felt his players didn't do similar, which is why Norwich had so much time on the ball, seemingly. Mahoma, then Slimani, Ali Ahmed most of the afternoon, the space they had to profit. So really, you strip it all back, that you had yesterday, a team who are in free fall and a team who are so much on an upward curve. It's frankly staggering from where Clement inherited that mess, which is what it was, an absolute mess. Hold below the waterline, 9 points from the opening 15 league games. Nowhere but League One was the end point there. And now, whatever the rest of this season brings in terms of league status, I think it's hard not to get very excited for what's to come over the horizon. Another transfer window this summer, if they're as astute as they have been so far, it seems, in terms of under Clement, but also maybe the last window or 2 now under Napa. If you look at some of the players in the hands of a head coach who knows what he's doing, that is exciting what they can do this coming summer. And then, of course, big season ahead. And it's hard to see also for me how they regress too much because this guy won't allow it. Even yesterday in the midst of that euphoria, we'll get into that and those nice scenes at the final whistle. He was talking about we need to stay on our toes. It's, for me, the next challenge. Forget about points, forget about rankings, forget about next season. He was asked about all of those in his post-match. Put those to the side. It's about the next challenge, a group of players who are moving forward, and they better keep moving forward because if not, they'll be out of the side. And, you told the anecdote that, and I've thought it for a time, but, you're in the mix zone there post-match, and Declan Rudd, the goalkeeping coach, has come and had a word with you and Chris Gorham, and he would know because he was under his stewardship. He sees very direct parallels between Clement and between Paul Lambert in terms of how they have got a group of players melded together. The constituent parts are not as strong as the collective because they are, as Adam, has said, off camera before we started recording that this is set against the backdrop of an injury crisis, choose your word, that's getting worse, not better, and yet they're still moving forward. And it's very hard to shake the belief that there's a Lambert feel to this guy and what he's doing and how he's galvanised not just a group of players, all the staff. And you look at that packed away end yesterday. I mean, they're loving life now. And I saw a few nice social posts from fans who were in that away end at Leicester yesterday, and they almost put pictures of them there with pictures that they pulled in from the depths of the Manning era, and just the contrast in feeling and mood around those fans following this football club and this team now is a testament to everybody, but primarily it's a testament to Philippe Clement and the impact he's had, stunning impact he's had in little over 3 months.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Adam, yesterday was their fifth win of 2026 on the road away from Carrow Road. To put that in context, they only won 4 for the entirety of last season under Johannes Hoftorp and the one that Jack Wilshere had. It's now 7 wins on the road for the season. Obviously, 5 of those have come this calendar year. That again eclipses what they did even in that David Wagner season where they finished 6th. That's more wins on the road. It's quite an incredible transformation. We're going to dive into the numbers a little bit later, but in terms of the win itself, to go on the road and to be as commanding and as controlled from minute 1 to 90, really. I was sat there, and probably you guys were as well. You wait for what felt like an inevitable Leicester onslaught at some point, be it at 0-0, be it at 1-0. Well, they're gonna come soon. Fatawu, Mavididi, Decordova-Reid, Ayew off the bench, Jordan James, who they brought on. Quality in that team, they're going to push, and it never came. And I think that speaks to what Paddy spoke about there and what Gary Rowett said, that control of the game they had yesterday was probably as good as we've seen on the road.
Yeah, I think given the magnitude for both sides, really, particularly Leicester, they really had to win that game yesterday to try and claw, even Norwich sort of back into sight for them. That had been 5 points if Leicester would have got the win yesterday afternoon to Norwich. And to go there and just show that level of fearlessness and just the control they had throughout the whole 90. I mean, first half, they didn't really carve out too many clear-cut opportunities, but they had full control of the game. I think apart from Harry Winks' kind of long-distance shot, which swerved a little bit and caused Kovacevic just to have to readjust. There wasn't really anything from a Leicester attacking perspective. Magoma was kind of the clear attacking outlet for Norwich and was creative again in that centre of the park, and he looks a real talent and a gem. Paddy spoke about recruitment, and he's a clear sign of hopefully what's to come under Philippe Clement this summer if they can find more sort of players of his mould. Second half was then completely different. Norwich controlled the whole thing from 45 really up to 90, and those attacking substitutions he made sort of around the 62nd minute clearly were decisive in the final outcome. And I think that just speaks to sort of the work that Philippe Clement's done, because you look at someone like Anis Ben Slimani was frozen out under Liam Manning, wasn't really seen to have a future at this football club. Even Errol Mundle-Smith hasn't played now for quite a number of games, at a young player who's still very raw, and there's a lot of work there to be done to sort of make him the final product in terms of a championship player. But to bring him on and again find that instant impact to sort of play a crucial role in the second, it's just night and day really. From what we saw in the early parts of the season, where Norwich generally looked sort of concerned, I guess, when they went 1-0 behind in an away game and they sort of went into their shells, and that was kind of that. But you look at the away wins they've got in 2026, and they've all really come against sides in and around them, which is telling, and it's why Norwich now have that 11-point buffer to the drop zone and look pretty secure that they're going to be in the championship next season. So all round, I think yesterday was another clear signal of what's to come under Philippe Clement in the future.
And that point that Adam makes there, Paddy, is the exact one I was going to move on to, in terms of if you look at the 6 games that they've had since Boxing Day, Charlton at home, against teams from 18th downwards, they have not conceded a single goal. They've only conceded 8 shots on target. I mean those numbers are, I guess, indicative of what he has created structurally and the type of team that is capable of beginning to control games with the ball, absolutely, and we speak about Makoma and some of the attacking stuff, but actually those defensive foundations, particularly in games like yesterday's, have been really strong and have really kind of built this run that they've been on in 2026.
I'm trying to think. I think it was, and prior to that spell, if we don't have to go that far back, but over the festive period there was the Watford defeat at Carrow Road, then there was the Stoke defeat. Watford probably unlucky on the night. Stoke, they just didn't. And to be fair, mitigation-wise, that was the end of that festive cycle, and a lot of miles had been put on the clock, metaphorically and sort of terms of player load. But I do recall on that point about structure and aggressiveness that he wasn't happy. He said that night, I think the Stoke game, he'd seen things in terms of, and he kind of referenced, he wasn't digging out centre-backs per se, but in terms of letting balls bounce, second balls, not going in, attacking and engaging and locking on, and elements he didn't like, he didn't want to see moving forward. And then you fast forward to yesterday, and it goes back to Gary Rowett's point. You look at Cordoba, you look at McConville, as a pair, but as individuals, they've come a long way in terms of they are that now willing to engage, to step up, to be brave, because obviously if you get it wrong, you're leaving space in behind. And maybe they got a little reminder of that in the first 15 minutes against Birmingham recently at Carrow Road, what can happen. But in the main, the reason that they have the ability to go and do what they've done, remarkably 5 away league wins in 6 since the turn of the year, but also the manner of these wins. These aren't a backs to the wall, resilient, and then they break out and they get something on a counter or a set piece. No, I mean, that was from start to finish a controlled, fully merited win, any which way you look at it, at Leicester yesterday. And also, and Clement touched on this yesterday, to be able to do that. And I know there's a familiarity maybe now with the back 5. It's Cordoba, it's McConville, it's Fisher, Krizeni and Kovacevic. But still, within the team, you're changing and interchanging players. Liam Gibbs is now coming on the right-hand side. We've seen Mahoma and Slimani slip in and out the situation at the top end of the pitch. Chris scored, and that's only his 5th league start yesterday because of various factors. To be able to have to, either through enforced or just because you need to manage minutes and still have that structure, have that, as Philippe talks a lot about, the story. All the players understand the story, whether they start, whether they come on, whether they played the week before or not. They understand the story. They understand what's being asked of them. And that cohesiveness it's in the DNA now. It's through every pore of a Philippe Clement Norwich performance, really. Yes, there will be 15 minutes here and there against Birmingham, or, maybe going back further, as I say, those Watford and Stoke games. But I think in the main, that structurally, tactically, technically, talent-wise, physically, the output is now consistently at the same levels, irrespective of which players are in or out on any given match cycle. So, that tells you the body of work that has been undertaken by Clement, his coaching staff, more broadly the support staff, to enable those players, and of course the players as well. They've been so receptive to this guy and his methods. And what I like as well, and you can see it in those unscripted, off-the-cuff moments around the final whistle, and then there's a playfulness with Clement. Of course, the respect is ultimately there, and they know they cannot step out of line with this guy. But you can see how much those players want to row in behind this guy now and have total faith and conviction that he knows what he's doing. He will get us up and out of this where we've been, and probably even higher now. And also, I guess if I'm a player now, I'm not dropping my standards because I want to be part of this. And he's talked about this recently, where he wants to get this club, where Mark Atanasio, Norfolk Holdings, Ben Napper, everybody connected, is back to the Premier League. Naturally enough, that is going to need bars raised every week now, and players are inevitably going to fall by the wayside. If I'm a player in that group, I'm doing everything in my power to stay on this journey as long as I can, because it's going to be some ride, I think.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, Adam, in terms of, two player. Well, obviously Ahmed started the game, but Slimani's introduction, it felt like a lot of control without probably that end product. Paris Magoma, who I'm sure we'll speak about a little bit more later on, magical really for so much of that opening hour, but they were just unable probably to carve out that opportunity. On comes Anis Ben Slimani. Even though it was a depleted squad, and Anis Ben Slimani kind of revealed after the game that he was pretty close to missing it with a slight groin issue. Errol Mundle-Smith coming on as a striker, which isn't I don't think is kind of natural position. He wants to play out wide. That's kind of where we've seen him predominantly. I know he's done that for the 21s and in some of the younger age groups, but my point is, it wasn't long ago that we were talking about second halves in particular being problematic for Norwich, that they got worse as games went on, and there was loads of reasons behind that, tactical, fitness wise, and now we're talking about them even with 14 players out, finding an extra gear, having an ability to win games. And I think that speaks a little bit to what Paddy said there in terms of what he has established, both in terms of mindset, but also in terms of tactically and also that ability that even if you're on the bench, not to have that disappointment is such a powerful thing that he has created in that group. It feels like a culture now that compared to what it was at the start of the season, we do have to keep going back there because it is just so stark from where it was. I mean, it feels like about 4 seasons in one at this point, but when that group looked so disconnected and individual compared to where they are now, where you've got those scenes and you've got players coming on and contributing, it's just completely night and day from where we were earlier on in the campaign.
Yeah, I think if Norwich would have had that bench in some of Manning's early games, fans would have been quite concerned looking at it, thinking, okay, where's kind of the instant impact going to be if we need a goal or we're chasing a game and we want to try and grab a winner? Because, you know, naturally those players probably weren't at the level that would have been expected of anybody that pulls on a Norwich City shirt, certainly in the Championship. But now there's almost a belief that anybody can come on and change a game. And that's really all stems from Philippe Clement and just the mindset, as you mentioned, that he's sort of instilled within this group. There does just feel that sort of team unity, and there's a belief now that they can go to everywhere in the Championship away from home and get some form of result. You know, primarily looks to be a win or naturally a defeat because they don't seem to be drawing any games at the moment. So, yeah, it is night and day. You know, even someone like Tony Springett, who, you know, had been out of the cold for so long, a couple of years since his last sort of Championship appearance, and suddenly he's thrown in at the deep end at Watford, and everyone's thinking, okay, you know, where's this come from? And even someone like that, who, you know, I know fans have maybe had sort of thoughts about his overall quality, but he's having an impact on games still, which, you know, is testament really to Philippe Clement, given the amount of injuries he's had to deal with this season. And it just feels like if they can really turn the wheel in the summer and sort of invest in areas and manage to, keep players fit, then what could happen with this group? Because if he's got, you know, maybe more quality players coming off the bench that can have an impact like Slimani did yesterday, then I think, you know, next season could be really exciting. And even someone like Slimani, you know, to go from being in the position he was in sort of October time or sort of earlier on in the season, not really wanted, and I think most fans would have happily signed for him to leave the football club to where he's at now, where he can come off the bench and within 30 seconds really he's having a shot on goal that's well saved by the goalkeeper, and then a couple of minutes later he's, you know, shifting the ball onto his, you know, right foot and bending it in the bottom left corner. It's quite remarkable, really. And I don't really know what Clement's done, you know, around Colney, but he certainly got these boys believing. And I think you could see that in the post-match scenes as well. I know Paddy referenced it. Even some of those players who weren't on the pitch, someone like Harry Darling, who, you know, I think when he signed for the football club would have naturally have expected to probably be playing week in, week out. And you could just see the smile on his face. You know, he's sort of involved in pushing players forward to get the acclaim from the away fans. And you know, that really hasn't been seen, I don't think, for quite a number of years, probably since maybe some of the Daniel Farke days or even Paul Lambert before him. Just that team unity, that feeling, that belief, and that stems right from, you know, the players to the head coach, right to the fan base at the moment, and long may that continue.
I'm going to flash up 2 tables now, and I'll kind of talk through it for people that are listening, because this always works a little bit better for our watchers on YouTube. So this is a lot of people may recognize this. This was the league table at the end of 2025. This is via Who Scored for what it's worth. You can see there Norwich on 21 points, second worst performers in the league, behind Sheffield Wednesday, who obviously had a points deduction within that as well, but that is kind of their record from August to December the 31st. That is kind of the situation that Norwich moved into 2026 with. They were 4 points adrift. I'll give you some other numbers around it as well. They were 4 points adrift of Portsmouth, but also crucially, I pay attention. It's not on this graph, but I'd pay attention to West Brom as well, who they were 10 points behind West Brom. If you compare that to now, they are now 10 points ahead of West Brom in such a short period of time. More pertinently, though, this is the table since the 1st of January. So 11 games played since then. Norwich City have the most wins. They have the most goals. They have conceded the joint fewest goals with Alex Neil's Millwall. They've taken the most points. They would, if the league table started on January the 1st, be top of the Championship. No draws in that period as well. I mean, that's remarkable, Pat. I mean, we can use all the superlatives that we can to kind of speak about that transformation. But very, very simply, Philippe Clement has taken a team that was the second worst performer from August to December in the Championship and turned them into, between January the 1st and March the 3rd, first as we sit here today, the best performer in the Championship, scoring goals, conceding very little, winning games. It's phenomenal. The question, I guess, for most people is that now something that is sustainable? And that is, you can't answer that. Time will tell. But all of it is a really positive indication of the body of work that this group of players have done in recent times. Just that remarkable transformation.
Yeah, my eyes drawing on those two tables to you look at the goal difference. If you want to flash that up again, 23 goal swing. They were -10, and now they're +13. Because the goal difference effectively tells you, A, they've got it right at that top end of the pitch, but equally they've got it right at the opposite end of the pitch. And in such an abbreviated period of time, that is for me, the points, of course, and the points are a result of wins, and results naturally are an indicator of performance levels. But that is very black and white. You know, to go from -10 to +13 is well, it basically says, which go right back to very early in the Clement era. And I think one of the first press conferences, and I asked him, well, look, you know, you're coming in, you've got a hell of a job on. Do you focus on, we've got to be better defensively and maybe keeping the back door shut? And then you'll turn your attention to the top end of the pitch and trying to unpick some of that creativity issue. Stopped me straight and said, no, we need to do both. In the situation we're in, we need to do both. We can't prioritise one over the other. The two are interlinked, you could argue, but equally, there may have been other managers in recent times who've crossed the threshold at Carrow Road who might have probably answered that in the terms of, well, we need to come in and we need to stop leaking goals, and then we give ourselves a solid platform, and then we can open up from there. But so that's quite illuminating in terms of a window into Clement's thought process, that he sees it in the round, and he also backs himself as a coach with people around him to come in and be able to deal with those two competing challenges in unison, and with all the attendant mitigation around the injuries and the unavailabilities. And if we're honest, you know, he's had one transfer window now, and January is notoriously difficult to do business, to actually bring in maybe a type of profile of player that he wants, that he in an ideal world would have in that group of players, not the bulk of whom he's inherited. And I'm sure, you know, in a quieter moment, he would say there's probably players there that don't naturally fit what he's looking for in terms of the makeup of the squad. So he's had to deal with that, injuries, and still move them forward to that degree. It is, I'll get to the point where I think we've got to stop talking about him or make a different name up for him, because if he continues in this fashion, make no mistake, he will start getting linked with jobs again come the summer. And that's not a place anybody connected to Norwich wants to be, but it's inevitable. Much like players when they perform, particularly in little purple spells. I'm thinking of Borja Science and what he went through in the first part of last season, and then suddenly it's Porto this, Galatasaray that, Atleti this, and you know, maybe that's unfortunately going to be the natural byproduct, because increasingly it's that sense that many of us had when he first walked through the door. He's been at Rangers, he's been in Bruges, he's been at Monaco. What's he doing at Norwich? With the greatest respect, because Norwich were fighting for their lives at the bottom of the Championship. What has attracted a guy of this calibre with this coaching CV to come and toil at the wrong end of the Championship? We know what has attracted him, because he's spoken often about it, and how he was not lied to, and there was no pulling the wool over his eyes. He was told from Atanasio downwards, this is what the situation is, but this is what we feel this club can get to. We want you to drive it. That as a project, and he doesn't like the word project, but that necessarily was how it was packaged to him. And that's all well and good, but you continue along this path, it is inevitable that there will come a point, and let's hope it is way down the track, and it is when he's got them back into the Premier League that been coveted, because I don't think what he's producing at the moment is probably the norm in terms of coaches going in, certainly into these environments, and producing this in 3 months, 3.5 months. It's not the norm. He is an outlier. He is an anomaly, lovely anomaly, but nevertheless, I think more often than not, coaches go in and they might get the inevitable uplift and have a positive outcome, and then it slips back again, and then you're dealing with a lot of the same issues from your predecessor. You know, for him, look at Eric Ramsey. Look how that imploded at West Brom. You know, look at Will Still going in at Southampton, Manning at Norwich. Previously, there's more examples of where it goes the other way than what we're now experiencing under this guy. And you have to put the caveat in that it's still relatively early in terms of his tenure, and we'll see where it goes from here. I know there's a little bit of a narrative around Clement in his other clubs, and you look at year 2 because he's such an intense coach. He's all-consuming. He talked himself. He's a perfectionist. He's never happy. And that is fifth gear all the time. Can at some point take its toll. And these are all things maybe to be aware of moving forward. But in the here and now, Norwich are very lucky to have a head coach of his caliber. Absolutely no doubt about it.
Yep, completely agree. Clearly this is very, you have to put a lot of context around this figure, but he currently has the highest win percentage of any Norwich manager who has managed over 20 games with 55%. He's overtaken Norman Lowe and George Swindon for that. But it's worth to say Norman Lowe managed Norwich for 5 years, so there's a hell of a lot more context around that stat. But even so, it's indicative of the level of impact that he has had. Particularly more impressive when you consider that he replaced and this isn't a dig, it's just a fact, that the head coach who was bottom of that list, albeit after just 17 games in charge. And I think what we're beginning to see, Adam, and to be fair, yesterday was an example of it, but we've seen it in previous weeks as well. I think I heard about 4 Philippe Clement chants yesterday. It really feels in terms of that fan base, and obviously there was the moment at the end where Kenny McLean's tricked him in some ways to go in front of that away end and give them the fist pumps that has now become customary after a Norwich City win. It really does feel like there's this, I'll use one of his words, this synergy forming, not just between this team and that fan base, but also between this head coach and this fan base. And it's been a while really since it's felt like Norwich have had that kind of unifying presence, leading them, I guess, in the dugout. And probably you have to go back to Daniel Farke. Now, clearly, there's a lot of work, as Paddy says, to do that. But in terms of that early feeling and that connection, I'm not sure we've seen something like this since that point.
No, I think it's very easy to think that connection is maybe born out of Norwich winning games, but we saw that under David Wagner. He won games for Norwich City, but it was the manner of the wins that the fans weren't happy with, and ultimately that's why the club had to make that decision to remove him from his position in the end of that season. And you kind of contrast that to Clement. He is winning games, but it's the manner of it. I think there was a chant about sexy football yesterday because it is pleasing on the eye what Norwich are producing and the level of control they had yesterday. It wasn't maybe like some of the games under Wagner where you sort of felt like they had to sit in deep and almost absorb all the pressure and then they might grab a late goal to win the game. It generally feels like a club that can ultimately get towards the top 6 and hopefully sustain themselves there maybe next season in what could be a tilt towards promotion, where that never really felt overly achievable under Wagner. I don't want to single him out because there's been other managers as well where that's sort of been a similar issue, but there is a lot of similarities, I think, to maybe what fans had under someone like Daniel Farke. They believe in every word he says. They watch every single press conference and they're loving what they're seeing from him. And I think, that sort of belief hasn't been at this football club for a long time. You go back to the start of this season, it felt very broken. The fans were angry at the club for a multitude of reasons. And what they were seeing on the pitch obviously wasn't helping that situation. And there wasn't even that synergy really with the players at all either. You sort of even go back to some of the wins in sort of the early part of Liam Manning's tenure, the win away at Portsmouth maybe, or the win away at Blackburn. And there wasn't quite that same level of feeling or belief there as what there was yesterday. You kind of see that the scenes post-match. And I think that was probably the longest one we've seen. Pretty much every single player, I think, in the starting 11 got a go at sort of fist pump in front of the away end yesterday afternoon. I think we can only sort of go upwards from here. Maybe we'll see all the substitutes and all the players who aren't even involved doing it very soon. But that's just where they're at. I sort of contrast it to every sort of season they've had recently. And I think, you mentioned maybe sort of the Paul Lambert era and kind of maybe having players that naturally weren't the best in the league, but just as a group firmly believed that they were good enough to go out there and beat everyone. And that sort of is kind of where I look at it at the moment. That sort of feels very similar, particularly given the amount of injuries. And that's why I think I'm so excited for what could be ahead, because if they really can invest it in the summer and maintain and keep hold of some of their sort of key assets in key areas, then then it's probably just about trying to address the fitness issues for next season, because they need to keep as many players fit as possible. But it is really nice to see a club that's united again, because you feel it around the city when you walk around, sort of during the week or whatever, and there's a build up to a big game. Everyone's talking about it. Everybody wants to be at the game on the Saturday afternoon and believes that Norwich can win. And we've not had that for, again, a long, long time. So, yeah, if Clement can keep this up, then I think he'll be having the keys to the city pretty soon.
It's fair to say some of them are better at the fist pumps than others, isn't it? I think we've established that very clearly. Jose Cordoba, very good, very strong fist pumps. What you mentioned, kind of everyone. I'd like to see Rui McConville have a go, because it feels like every goal celebration he's either at the front of, or he's kind of got his own one going on, and he hasn't quite been pushed forward yet. So I'm sure that will that will come in the weeks ahead. They even managed to lure Vladan Kovacic, who was effectively basically down the tunnel by the time he then turned back and retreated and gave his own version before, obviously, that clean sheet celebration as well. So yeah, it's good to see. Let's move on to some of the individuals in this, Paddy, and specifically, I think it's a really exciting number 10 race that is hotting up. I know you put a piece up about this morning on our website and our app, and I think it's hard not to be excited by Paris Makoma and what he is producing. But at the same time, for all of the aesthetics and just how watchable he is as a footballer, he's silky. He's kind of, if you like football, you like watching Paris Makoma. I think he's one of those players. But then you have all of that, and then Anis Ben Slimani comes on, and his efficiency in the final third is remarkable. A brilliant finish. Probably unlucky that he didn't score one before that in what was probably the best chance of the game that Stolarczyk saved. But we mentioned 2026. I think it's harder probably to find a championship footballer who's been more effective in the final third than Anis Ben Slimani. 10 goal contributions in 12 under Philippe Clement. As Adam said earlier, from where he's come from, that's remarkable. But in terms of that race now for a number 10 spot, what a decision and what a choice Philippe Clement has in the weeks ahead around that.
In contrast to top end of the pitch, in contrast to maybe defensively in certain areas, certainly on the right hand side of the attacking three, it is that luxury that he referenced that Premier League clubs by and large have in his pre-match, where you look at every position in an 11 and there's probably two equal profiles of the same quality. Norwich don't have that. They certainly don't have that when you overlay the injuries. They do have it in the number 10 role. And in answer to that, the quotes are up now, he did want to broaden it out to Jacob Wright, who, give him his due, in December, there was one or two occasions in Southampton primarily, the home game, when him and Jovan Makama effectively decided that game. He was good. He was good in that role. He even yesterday in that answer threw in Matthias Quist-Gordon with the right striker ahead of him, but he could offer something slightly different in that 10. So, but of course, the eye is drawn to Slimani and I don't think it's necessarily one or the other, or it's one versus the other. I think, as yesterday underlined, Mahoma for 60 minutes softens up Leicester and was very unfortunate not to get on the score sheet. There was also that corner that he swung out for Quist-Gordon. He should really do better than to brush the side netting. So he may have walked off the pitch with a goal/assist, but nevertheless, he's done a good enough job that, almost pushing back, and then Slimani comes in and delivers the actual blow to the solar plexus with a real good goal. I mean, it's made by it's the touch to shift it, but also the movement away, which has completely lost that near defender. I think it might be a Coley. I'll have to watch it back. And then obviously the technical ability to cut the ball away from Stolarczyk, who made an excellent save a matter of moments before. Real high quality in the moment when it matters execution from that player who's in the Norwich form of his life, that is for sure, injury issues or not. And I think part of that is because, pre-Mahoma, it was, I could do you a job. Clement told the story. He looked at Slimani, if he's honest, in his first week and thought, you're not for me. I'm not really seeing enough from you. But then in the nature of the questionnaires and the dialogue back and forth with his players, Slimani said, look, I know what you're looking for in a 10 role. I believe I can deliver that. Gave him his opportunity. Boy, did he take it. And then, Mahoma comes in and he's grabbing a few headlines. So I don't think it's any coincidence. If you go back to, I think it was Blackburn at home as well, where Mahoma was, I think he started that day. I might be wrong. But anyway, when Slimani came on the pitch, he was very keen to make an impression. And I sensed that yesterday as well, because he knows now, and we also know with him in the background, he's talked about it, there's that World Cup carrot to try and get into the Tunisian national squad. He's been out of it for a while. He needs to be in the team. He needs to be performing. So there's that. But equally, he knows he needs to be in the team and performing, because if he's not, there's another rival who's showing himself slightly different in terms of profile, but nevertheless equally effective. And the final part of that answer I liked from Clement was, it isn't about Anis or Paris or Jacob or Matthias or anybody else. It's now a team. Maybe it cuts to the debate we've had already in this podcast about structure. Anybody playing in that 10 role in this team, where you've got McLean and Field providing that defensive ballast, you've got behind them a very good now back five offering that platform, and then you've got wide players who want to give you the ball. Ali Ahmed always looking for Mahoma yesterday. Equally, Liam Gibbs, he's trying to find whether it's Mahoma, whether it's Slimani when he comes on. The fullbacks, if they get further forward, they're looking for those 10s. Now, if you're a 10 in this side, you're getting the conditions you need to get on the ball, get in those pockets between a midfield and a defence. And then you look up and you've got options on the wide. You've got, maybe to a lesser extent with Chris Gordon that you would with a Toure or Makama, but nevertheless you have something there to try and connect with. And I like that answer, because he's not looking at it in the prism of it's about one individual now coming through and stepping forward in an Emi Buendia or a James Madison scenario. No, it's, again, that broader point about I will create a structure for a team and I can interchange pieces of the chessboard and still get that effectiveness, get that efficiency, get that performance level collectively, irrespective of who goes into that position. And again, you bring it all back round, that comes back to coach and very good coaching as well. So fair play to those players. They're really putting the challenge down now, but equally, they're now in an environment where they can go and can show their best selves. Paris Mahoma must think, what have I walked into here? A team set up for me to come in and really flourish and really show my skills. And boy, is he doing that. But equally, Anis Ben Slimani is. I mean, if you wanted to start the Barry Butler from sort of December onwards, I think you'd be hard pressed to look beyond him. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I would agree in terms of that efficiency and what he brings to the team. The kind of threat in and around the box is immense. Certainly, yeah, it's exactly probably what you want from a number 10. They're very different as well. I mean, Adam, to kind of speak about Paris Magheimer, it does feel like, I think generally when you think about Norwich in the last 15 years or so, and Paddy listed some of the names, you could throw Wes Hoolahan in there and others. It feels like number 10s and these players that are quite technical and less so, some clubs are really kind of wedded to chalk on the boots, wingers, pace, beating players. And of course, Norwich City fans love that as well. All football fans do. But it feels primarily at Norwich over the last 15 years, what the players that they've really taken into their hearts and enjoyed watching are these kind of creative types, the number 10s who can thread a pass and a silky. And it's far too early, and I'm not by any means putting Paris Maghoma's name in that conversation. But I think you can tell in terms of the reaction that he's got and some of the stuff that he's doing on the pitch, which is very, very high level. I mean, Pontus Jansson, who played a lot of games for Leeds and for Brentford as well, didn't he, in the Premier League, described him in the week as one of the best technical footballers he's worked with. He is a very fun, exciting footballer, and I guess that context kind of you can understand why Norwich fans have taken to him so quickly. I think I've just about, although I'll probably all have it back in my head now, got that new chant that was coming out from the away end yesterday on him. It's been a pleasure to watch him in the last few weeks. Yeah,
it doesn't really feel like Norwich has sort of had a good number 10 option now for 2-3 seasons, maybe longer than that. I sort of feel like Buendia was probably one of the last ones to exit the club that really sort of established himself as that firm number 10, and the fans really sort of took him to his heart. Someone like Sarah obviously had creative, output, but wasn't sort of what you'd call a natural number 10. So I think he probably has now taken that mantle, and you said, the fans have definitely taken to him early doors. And I think what I look at as well is the fact that, he's unable at the moment to play more than 60 minutes. So once he gets to that point where he can sort of, give you that creative output and sort of direction for a full 90 minutes, and his fitness levels are maybe at a sort of peak level, I'm quite excited to see what he could produce in this Norwich City side, particularly, given the amount of injuries that they have around him at the moment. There's no sort of natural right wing. Liam Gibbs has done a good sort of job out there as an option, but I think when Norwich hopefully have sort of a good base three in behind the striker, then I think his levels can naturally go up even more. And I said to you actually walking down the stairs at sort of half time yesterday that he reminds me a lot of someone like Eze. I know when he was at QPR, just kind of the ability to glide, sort of past defenders, and you don't really know what you're going to get from him. He's almost a box of tricks, and he can be in difficult, tight spaces, and you sort of back him to find a way out of it, and just shoot from distance and probably find the back of the net. Just someone who's a joy to watch. And you sort of look at maybe the trajectory that someone like Eze's taken. I'm not going to sort of put him on that pedestal yet, but there does feel like there's that ability there. And someone who's 24, not really sort of had a sustained career yet anywhere. I mean, his spell at Bolton was probably his best. He's had loan spells at MK Dons and Wimbledon, but never really sort of had a club where he could call home and play football week in, week out. And that feels like Norwich maybe are now given an opportunity, and he's desperate to grasp it. And who would blame him, really? Because, Paddy mentioned, the sort of excitement, I guess, of playing in a Philippe Clement system. And he's definitely relishing that at the moment. So, yeah, now it's just about keeping sort of this trajectory moving upwards. He's got sort of another, 11, 12 games left of this season to just kind of bed himself into this team. And then he's got a full pre-season, hopefully, to kind of work on that fitness to get himself into a position where he can really contribute straight away from the start of next season. So, yeah, really excited to see, what could happen with him. And he feels like one that, in the long term, the fans will definitely love.
Yeah, I would agree. My favourite moment yesterday actually was the one where he was kind of in a bit of a physical tussle with a Leicester player on halfway, and he just shrugged him off, and then he beat Ollie Skip to the ball, and then I think he had a shot save from Stolarczyk. But actually, that strength and power to combine with some of the technical stuff was a little bit that we haven't seen from him so far. But yeah, hey, what a couple of options that is for Norwich City to have in that number 10 position with him and Slimani firing as they are, and that's more important, Paddy, because of the situation they find themselves in terms of strikers at the moment, which is there is just one of them, unless you want to add Jakov Medic or Errol Mundell-Smith to that conversation after this week. But one natural option in Matthias Quiscoren, who, again, similarly to maybe some other options, is having, yesterday was his first start under Philippe Clement since his first game in charge at Birmingham, and he kind of played in more of a number 10, and then Clement kind of decided that maybe the balance of the team wasn't best suited for having kind of two strikers up there. What a luxury that was, having two strikers, by the way. Not so much now, but it does feel like that goal scoring burden is going to have to be taken by other players. And again, to be fair, since Clement has come in, we have seen a lot better kind of distribution of goals, as opposed to maybe just relying on one striker or one person in particular. But it's a really difficult situation that they've got to navigate, which again makes all of this more impressive. But for the last 11 games of the season, you've got a striker there that they're going to have to wrap in cotton wool. I thought he looked pretty physically tired quite early on yesterday, again, which is understandable given the context of it. It's a difficult one that they've got to manage now for this period.
Yeah, it is. It is, but you put that to Clement, and he doesn't want to hear that tone, because for him it's okay. I need to come up with solutions. There's no point in me, looking at the situation in a negative. It's what can we do? And he is at pains to point out. Almost takes it as a slight that not that we would forget, but that I told you, like when I first walked in, we won't be reliant on one striker. And we all know who that was at the point that he was referencing that. But the goals will come from other areas. And yesterday, it's a winger and it's an attacking midfielder. And, he is like a lot of things. He has delivered on what he said he was going to do when he first walked through the door. They aren't reliant on one striker. Of course, you have Mo Toure hitting the ground as well as he did prior to his groin injury. And then slightly earlier in the period, Jovan Makama as well, just hitting that seam of rich goal scoring form. But it's less about the goals when we talk now strikers, and we talk sort of senior established striker, of which Quiscoren is a bit of an endangered species for the foreseeable, until Toure hopefully is back more the 4-week than the 6-week part of the cycle that's been mapped out. It's less about goals, because they clearly are, and they underlined it again yesterday, they can score goals from other areas. It's more the build-up play, the patterns of play, how they're having to adapt now. Now they're having to be pragmatic, is the word he's used, to an nth degree, with Jakov Medic, obviously against Sheffield Wednesday. But, if Quiscoren isn't, and it would seemingly be the case, that not going to be able to probably go beyond 60 minutes, 75 minutes, then it's not only what you do when he's not on the pitch, and yesterday it was Mundell-Smith, it's when he's on the pitch, because his game isn't Mo Toure, it isn't Jovan Makama, it isn't back to goal for me, fighting much more physically imposing central defenders in close quarters and then running the channels. That isn't Matthias Quiscoren. They have to come up with something different, something adapted, something that still works and is still effective, and it was yesterday. But it does feel more of an effort. It feels more natural, I think, in terms of how Clement wants to set his teams up and how he wants to progress when he gets in and around the final third. It feels a bit more of an effort when it's Quiscoren in there, because I don't think naturally that's the profile of striker he likes. And, you look at Makama, you look at Toure, okay, when he was in the building and his head was right, Josh Sargent, but also equally, who did they go for in January? Casper Hu from Bodo Glimt. Similar striker to those guys, less so Chris Gordon. So I think it's pretty evident. And he talked about, off the back of the Sargent confirmation, that they will go big in the summer for a striker who I think is probably going to be more in that bracket of profile than a Chris Gordon. So clearly, in an ideal world, I don't think he would want him starting and leading the line, but it's not an ideal world, far from it. They have to be, I think, in the next few weeks, probably as creative as Clement has been to try and unpick this, on the face of it, thorny conundrum that he has a player who probably he wouldn't in an ideal world start or lead his line in terms of the attack, but he's going to have to. And for me, with Chris Gordon, what he is penalty box. You get the service right to him in and around the penalty box. He has that natural instincts that he will be on the end of things, and he will, that goal, sadly, it was chalked off early doors against Sheffield Wednesday midweek. But I mean, that wasn't necessarily in the penalty box, but running into the box, first touch, hit, bang, near post, lovely finish. He has that in his locker, but that's inside the box. I think the problem now, the challenge now for Clement is, if he's going to be leading your line for the foreseeable, what it looks like in the box, because you can't. And we saw one or two examples where it was McConville or it was Cordoba, and they just went big, and the ball went up in the air and it's coming straight back, because he's good in the air, but he's not going to fight far bigger centre backs. And if that's the case, and the ball's going to come back towards your own goal, then they need to come up with something a bit different. And I have no doubts that Clement over this period will adapt and will try and mitigate what you don't get with a Chris Gordon leading the line compared to some of those other options. So, do we have any doubts that he will come up with a plan? No, absolutely not. But we have to be brutally honest. Matthias Chris Gordon, I don't think, is a Philippe Clement leading man, as it were, in terms of strikers. But that's the cards he's got at the moment, and he has to play them as best as he can.
Yeah, and it's worth noting, he said to Paddy on Friday, he doesn't feel that there's any kind of free agents that can come in and impact it. I think that's probably the right call. It's very difficult at this stage to bring in someone who's not playing football and then expect them to be able to play and have that quality as well. There is now a slot in their EFL squad, clearly, with Josh Sargent's departure, so they could in theory go down that route. And he also referenced the fact that perhaps two of the younger under-21s who were closer to it, Dylan Jones and Ken Abbo, both went out on loan in January. And I think Dylan Jones as well is injured at the moment. So that's another issue. Hopefully, all being well, they'll have Mo Toure back at the more optimistic end of that 4 to 6 week kind of timeline that he has been given. And it won't be an issue for too long. Obviously, there's an international break at the end of March as well that is hopefully going to buy them some time on that front as well. Adam, you mentioned sexy football earlier. I thought there were two players yesterday who probably were unsexy in what they did, but actually were very effective in the overall team performance. If I throw the names Sam Field and Liam Gibbs at you, it wasn't a headline-grabbing display from either of them, but I think it was probably very important in terms of their work rate. I think it's as effective as we've seen Liam Gibbs on the right-hand side, who, let's be honest, he probably by his own admission, he's not ever going to give you that creativity that a Makoma or that an Ahmed will provide. But in terms of work rate, energy, structure, solidity, I thought he did all of that tenfold. And then with Sam Field, I keep coming back to the same point, which is, how on earth didn't he get in the QPR team?
Yeah, I always think with a defensive midfielder, you almost don't want to notice them, because that means that they're doing a good job, and ultimately, everything is positive. And I think that was almost that with Sam Field yesterday. Nothing really ever got past him and Kenny McLean, which meant that the defence had a relatively quiet and easy afternoon. He was obviously instrumental as well with the touch for Slimani, grabbing the assist for the opener as well. That sort of ability just to have the composure in that position to find Slimani. That speaks volumes, I think, about him as a player and his experience at this level. And clearly when he arrived, and there was a few fans that maybe sort of turned their nose up a little bit at him, but you sort of look at his sort of overall career to this date. He's played so many games in the Championship. He knows what it's all about. He's able to sort of dig in and have that grit in the midfield that you want. And that sort of allows Norwich's more attacking players, the likes of Magoma, Ahmed, to go and sort of display their ability in the forward area, because they know they've got that added protection in behind them. I think he is another one who's consistently so far put in sort of 7, 8 out of 10 performances week in, week out. maybe come the summer, Norwich will have a few more options in that area of the pitch. It feels probably more unlikely that they would sort of go back in and sort of try and maybe recruit him permanently. But, who knows? The transfer windows are volatile and players can leave at a different point. So there might be a position where actually they think, he is a good option for what they might want next season. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But yeah, you mentioned Liam Gibbs, who, I think fans have maybe sort of questioned him playing out in that position. Again, as you said, not his natural position. It's felt really throughout his whole Norwich City career that he's never really been able to sort of find a home in any position. He's always kind of been crowbarred into positions that he doesn't want to play. But he does give you that energy, and he gives you that work rate that you mentioned. And yeah, there's a few opportunities yesterday. He flashed a really good ball across that no one sort of banked on early on in the game. And there's a few sort of different moments in the game where maybe Leicester was sort of trying to get a little bit more of a sort of hold in the game. And he was sort of, again, instrumental in Norwich managing to continue to stem the flow in their own sort of, their own sort of side. So, yeah, I think, it's an option for the time being. Clearly, when Norwich get more players back who can operate on that right side, then I would expect him probably to revert back to being more of a central midfield option. But yeah, you can't knock him. He's having to play a position he doesn't want to play, and he's doing a decent enough job there.
Yeah, and he's doing it in a team that is very left-sided at the moment, it feels, because you've got Field and McLean in there who are both left-footers, so naturally they go to that side. Macoma, I think, is probably both-footed, but he's definitely capable. He's left Ahmed as well, which probably, in terms of where they find themselves and the shortage of options on that right side, isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. But yeah, like you mentioned, most crosses yesterday, some of them were really positive, and there were some really good turnovers in there. Probably the best one was when he pinched the ball off Ollie Skip to send Macoma away for that chance in the first half, which was probably as close as Norwich City got. But you can understand, I think, in the circumstances why Clement is putting him there, the industry and the work rate that man goes for. I think there's very few people that would debate quality maybe, and in that position I'm sure he probably would as well. But in terms of work rate and effort and dedication, I think maybe rivaled by Tony Springett in that area of the pitch, which is at least going to give them an option until maybe some of those more frontline options return. Paddy, let's look ahead then, because I don't have many kind of footballing regrets really, but I think one of the biggest ones I have since doing this job is the fact that we didn't get that opportunity to see a FA Cup quarter-final at Carrow Road in that COVID season after that brilliant Tottenham win in the 5th round under a certain Daniel Farke. Obviously, the COVID shutdown prevented us from seeing that Manchester United quarter-final, which would have been, no doubt in my mind, an unbelievable occasion, irrespective of the result in the end. I don't know if were you there for that, Adam? You can kind of shake your head. Maybe you were or weren't. No, we were in there for that, and it was one of probably was Norwich's best performance of that COVID shutdown. Not a high bar, but they were probably unfortunate to walk away with that, forced Manchester United to extra time. They've got an opportunity to try and set that up. Obviously, there's a few things that have got to go their way. They've got to get past Leeds first and foremost, but then a home draw as well. But this is given everything we've spoken about in the last 52 minutes, their form, where lots of players find themselves. I mean, we had that quote from Philippe Clement in the Belgian media, didn't we, a few weeks ago, about how, put this team in the Premier League and I guarantee we'll stay up. Really good test of that Sunday against Daniel Farke's Leeds United at Ellen Road to see how competitive they can be against top flight opposition.
I hadn't seen that quote. Is that what you said, was it?
Yeah, it was.
Okay. Well, he's a good coach. I'm not sure he's that good, though, to be fair, keeping this group of players, which is no reflection on this group of players, but the bar is very... I mean, look at Sunderland. They had to go up and then whack 110 million or whatever is the figure on top to improve their squad. To do what Norwich sadly didn't do twice under Farke, which was, well, two things, really. A, be competitive and have a go, and B, stay up, which it looks like Sunderland will do. So... yeah, I think this is a great week now to build into, because the reality is, if you're not green and yellow, you think Leeds are progressing, because they're the Premier League entity. They're at home. I know they fell the wrong side yesterday against Man City, but I think they've got a game midweek as well, which that could, and they need points still for what they're trying to achieve. So. That's got to play, hopefully, into Norwich's favour. Norwich have a clearer week, as it were, in terms of building up. Not going to make a huge amount of difference to the mid to longer term injuries, but as we know now, Sloani had an issue coming into the game. Cordoba missed the Sheffield Wednesday midweek, as did Ben Kraseni. a Manqua Forson. We saw him there running on the pitch yesterday, and I think Philippe indicated if Tamani hadn't made it, then Forson would have been on the bench. So those injury, or those ones on the fringe of being back involved, or maybe slightly carrying a knock, it's a good period now to build in. But what a great incentive for those group of players, but also Clement and his coaching staff, because that is ultimately where Norwich, under this head coach, are targeting. It is Premier League. So if it is Premier League, then here's a very early part of his tenure, albeit, but nevertheless, a measuring stick. Okay, how far off are we? Are we even that far off? Can we actually go there and really put it to Leeds? And they certainly won't. There'll be no intimidation factor. There'll be no fear that they're not good enough. Absolutely not. This group, and we were at the fans forum recently with the Norwich Fans Social Club. Diane and her excellent team of volunteers, and Ali Ahmed was on the stage, as was McConville, as was Matson. Ali Ahmed was asked about this tie. He said, "Look, we will go there believing we are good enough to go and win that game and progress and maybe book that FA Cup quarter final." And you can guarantee Clement will be reiterating that message in the days ahead. And why not? There's 3,000 Norwich fans there. I know there's a debate about whether they could have had a bigger allocation, but that's going to be the number. It'll be an unbelievable atmosphere, I'm sure, because, Leeds, let's be honest, their fan base will look at it. We'll see Norwich coming to them in the Championship. That's a stepping stone for them to go deep into this competition, which they haven't done for a long time in the FA Cup. So it's going to be an unbelievable atmosphere at Ellen Road, and we've experienced that before. I think of a Farker team when they went there and they were vying with Leeds for that title win, and the Vrancic early free kick that night, 3-0 was it, I think, in the end. And, they got the right end of it that night. Of course, it's gone the other way. Most recently, painfully, the playoff hammering under David Wagner. Farker's, I don't think, lost a fixture against his old club since he took over. So everything points to an inevitable outcome. But this is the FA Cup. And did Crystal Palace think they were going to go to Macclesfield and get turned over? No. So, things stranger than this have happened, absolutely, this season, historically in the FA Cup. So why not go there and play with a freedom and an expression that they've shown when the pressure's been really on at the wrong end of the Championship? They've still managed to play with an effervescence that almost the pressure's off their shoulders and they can express themselves. Well, that's equally, and if not more so, the case going into what on the face of it looks like a Premier League club advancing to the quarterfinals. Okay, let them think that, and maybe if there is any complacency inside the league camp, then that's something that can also flow into Norwich going there. And for me, that's not a shock. Norwich getting the better of Leeds in the FA Cup next weekend, that's not a shock, because if anybody thinks that's a shock, you're not studying what's happening here with this players, this head coach, and this fan base. The belief is back. And whether it's Leeds, whether it's Wrexham away, whether it's West Brom, whether it's Leicester, they believe they can go there and get a result. So what a week ahead, and what a game in store as well. I can't wait to get up there, to be honest, for the Farker derby.
Yeah, it's and to be fair, I'll give Paddy his credit. He did call this as the fourth round games were going on, that he sensed the Farker reunion, and the FA Cup gods have provided us with that. Yeah, this is going to be the first meeting in this competition between the teams since January the 8th, 1977. Leeds were 5-2 winners that day and were 5-1 up at the break. Goals from Colin Tuggett and Martin Peters for Norwich in that game. And there's only been, I think, 6 meetings in this competition between the teams. Any guesses on how far you have to go back for a Norwich City win over Leeds in the FA Cup, gents? Any guesses? Oh, look at that silence.
I'm waiting for Adam to drop in there. He's better on the stats than me. Well, you've set that up to suggest it's pre-war.
My history. Yes, I think so. Yeah.
What year, Connor? I'll tell you if it's pre-war.
Oh no, it might not have been actually. 1935. That wasn't pre-war, was it? Or was it during?
Pre-Second World War, yeah. Pre-Second World War. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. It was pre-Second World War. So a long time ago, and that was a 2-1 victory in a fourth round replay. So that is how long it's taken. It's not been that common for these teams to meet. To be fair, and I mean, Adam, final word to you. Really, how much are you looking forward to that? Because as Paddy set up it, with their Championship position much improved now, 11 points from the drop zone. Clearly, some work to do. I think we're all desperately waiting for them to reach that 50-point figure. I put it as 2 wins now from definitive safety, although they're already feeling a very healthy position. It does feel like there is an opportunity to really, as Paddy said, go and play with freedom and try and go there and win a game. And if you do that, who knows? Then you are only 1 win from Wembley, which would be a really exciting kind of side quest to this season and the final stages of it.
I'd echo most of the sentiments really that Pad said. You know, I just think it is opportunity knocks for Norwich ultimately, because the league position now is fairly healthy, and it feels, you know, pretty likely, I think, given the current trajectory, that they'll get the couple of wins they require from the last 11 in the league to at least sort of guarantee championship football next season. So why not go and have a crack at the FA Cup? I think there's probably a lot more pressure, obviously, on Leeds naturally being the home side, being the Premier League side, and I think there probably is that expectation from their fan base that, you know, they've got to try and go on and sort of get to the quarterfinals and maybe go further on in this competition, where I think Norwich, maybe there's not that level of expectation, but there is that belief. And for all those reasons, really, I think Norwich probably do owe Leeds a bit of revenge, I guess, and an opportunity to try and get a win over them, because it's been a while. You know, I think the FA Cup is always naturally historically an opportunity for smaller sides or sort of underdogs to go and get wins against bigger sides. And I think the gulf obviously is not as big maybe between Norwich and Leeds as what it's been between some of the other sides at different points this season. But I even go back to the fourth round tie between, you know, Birmingham and Leeds. I know that was at St Andrews, but Birmingham really did give them a game, and probably on the day maybe even edged that game and deserved to advance. So I think Norwich have almost got to use that as a sort of template to go there and really attack it and hopefully cause a shock, because I think it's one of them. If they can grab themselves an early goal, we've seen it before at Ellen Road, that fan base can turn if their side's not performing and maybe the result's not going in the way they want it to go. So yeah, I'm excited for it. I can't wait. The atmosphere is always really good there, particularly underneath the lights. And Norwich being backed by 3,000 fans who will all go there with exactly the same belief that we all go into this game with under Philippe Clement, that Norwich can go there and try and produce a victory and get themselves into the quarterfinals. And then, only 1 win away from Wembley. And that would be a really nice ending to what's been, a difficult season, maybe up till the midway point. But it would be probably, reflective of current form and sort of Norwich's, current upwards rise.
Absolutely, bring it on! It's going to be fascinating, and we will join you after that game at some stage for the next PinkUn.com Norwich City podcast to hopefully talk about Norwich City being a game from Wembley, which would be absolutely fantastic, wouldn't it? In that competition. Thank you very much for watching and for listening. And as ever, if you watch, you can listen. If you listen, you can watch. You can find us on YouTube or your preferred podcast player. We'll have all of the build up and more analysis and coverage to this weekend's win at Leicester as well over at PinkUn.com. Thank you very much for joining us. See you again very, very soon.